In 1959, 9 experienced hikers set out into one of the most unforgiving mountain ranges in Russia. They were young, skilled, and fully prepared for extreme winter conditions. But within days, every single one of them would be dead. And what investigators found at the scene made absolutely no sense. This is the story of the Dyatlov Pass incident, a mystery that even decades later still has no clear explanation. The group was led by Igor Dyatlov, a 23-year-old engineering student and an experienced mountaineer. The rest of the group were also highly trained. They weren't amateurs, they had completed difficult expeditions before and knew how to survive. Their goal was to complete a long-distance ski trek across the Ural Mountains. It was meant to be challenging, but not deadly. On January 27, 1959, they began their journey. At first, everything went smoothly. They documented their trip with photos, journals, and notes, smiling, joking, enjoying the adventure. There was no indication that anything was wrong. But by early February, communication stopped. When the group failed to return on time, search teams were sent out. Days later, rescuers finally located their campsite. What they found was deeply disturbing. The tent was still standing, partially buried in snow. Inside, all their belongings were intact: clothes, shoes, food, equipment. But the tent had been cut open from the inside. Not unzipped, cut open, as if they needed to escape immediately. Outside the tent, investigators found footprints leading away. They weren't chaotic. They weren't running. They were calm, almost controlled. But there was something even stranger. Some of the footprints were made by people who weren't wearing shoes, in freezing temperatures that could drop below -30 degrees Celsius. Following the tracks, searchers found the first 2 bodies beneath a large tree. They were barefoot, wearing only minimal clothing. They had tried to start a fire, but it wasn't enough. Further into the forest, more bodies were discovered. Some appeared to be attempting to return to the tent, but they never made it. And then, the final group was found weeks later, buried under snow. This is where the mystery became even more disturbing. Several of the hikers had severe internal injuries, broken ribs, crushed skulls, but there were almost no external wounds, no cuts, no bruising consistent with a fight. It was described as injuries similar to those from a car crash or an immense pressure force. One of the hikers was missing her tongue. Others were missing eyes. There were also traces of radiation found on some of their clothing. And yet, there were no signs of another group, no evidence of an attack, no clear explanation for what had happened. So what could have caused this? The official conclusion was that an avalanche had forced the hikers to flee their tent. But many experts argue that the slope of the mountain was too gentle for a significant avalanche, and there was no clear evidence of one. Another theory suggests military testing, possibly involving explosive devices or radiation. There were even reports of strange lights in the sky around that time. Others point to a phenomenon known as infrasound, low-frequency sound waves that can cause extreme anxiety, panic, and disorientation. If the hikers were exposed to this, it could explain why they suddenly fled their tent in a state of fear. And then, there are the theories that go even further. Unknown forces, unexplained phenomena, something we still don't fully understand. But here's the part that keeps this mystery alive. None of the explanations fully fit. Why cut the tent open? Why leave without clothing? Why were the injuries so severe yet so clean? Why was there radiation? And why, after all these years, do we still not have a definitive answer? In 2019, Russian authorities reopened the case. They once again concluded that an avalanche was the most likely cause, but for many that answer still isn't convincing, because the details don't fully line up. The Dyatlov Pass incident remains one of the most chilling unsolved mysteries in history. 9 people entered the mountains. Something forced them into the freezing darkness, and whatever happened that night may never be fully explained.